welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC Live. It is a special edition because we are revealing the top 10 of the top 39 players under 21 right now. That's gone live on ESPNFC.com today for a sixth straight year. We are bringing you a list of the game's top youngsters under 21. And helping me do so, we've got Rodrigo Faez, we've got Mark Ogden and Gabriele Marcotti. Now, guys, before we do get to the list, before we hear from the man who's actually put the list together in Tor Kristian Karlsen, let's talk a little bit before we get to that. First of all, Gab, tell us a little bit about Tor and why it matters that he's chosen these players.
So it's funny, right? Because I've known Tor for 15, 20 years now, because we're both old, let's face it. And we all sit here, we all get paid to give our opinions, especially Rodri, and this guy's good, that guy's bad. But, you know, we're on the media, right? We're hopefully we're more informed than fans because we get paid to spend time thinking and talking to people. But, you know, we're all on the outside. And Tor, on the other hand, he's a long-time scout. He's been scouting for clubs since he was 22, 23 years old. He's worked for clubs in England, in Germany, in Norway, in France. He became a director of football at a Champions League club. He's been director of football at multiple clubs, but including at Monaco. He was chief executive at Monaco when they were throwing a ton of money around. So in other words, he kind of like lived or died by his opinions, right? So if Augie or I get something wrong, it will probably still be on the air the following week. Tor gets too many things wrong, he's out of a job. So, and he's still scouting professionally, and it's a privilege to be able to rely on his insight.
So, put lightly, he's kind of a big deal. Before we do get to the list, Rodri, is there a name, without saying it, that you think they must be top?
Well, I think we all got a name. I mean, he's English. He plays as a midfielder. He plays in Spain for Real Madrid. And I think that Jude Bellingham should be at the top of the list. But I don't really know if he's going to be up there. But I think he deserves to be up there. But I don't know, because I got, guys like Pedri, for example, like maybe Musiala. I'm in love with that guy. And I hope that he plays for La Liga or Premier League in a soon future. I don't know what will happen to him. But, I'm in love with that player. And he should be at least top 5 of that list. I don't really know. So that's why, I can't wait for you to unveil this top 20 list because, I'm in love with these under 21 players. And as Gab said, I'm in love also with football. I'm not a professional, okay? But, I in love to talk about this kind of thing. So thank you very much for having me, and let's see if Jude Bellingham is up there or not.
We will. I'm sure there'll be a few players from La Liga featuring that we'd love to get you to break down for us as well, Rodri. And just before we do get to the list, Mark, it's interesting that Rodri was saying about how many good young players there are right now. It really does feel that in this age range, it's not just that there's loads to choose from, it's that they feel so experienced at the highest level, so many of them right now.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've taken 39 rather than a round number like 30 or 40. It's kind of, it's an exact number of how many really good under 21-year-olds there are. So, but that's right. I mean, obviously, clubs are now putting much more money into their academies. They're focusing much more on developing young talent, and especially at the top end where, unfortunately for the smaller clubs, the bigger clubs tend to hoover up the best young talent. I mean, the majority of the best young players nowadays, I'd say, come from the biggest clubs because they're able to pick them up at, sometimes as young as 5 and 6, but, more realistically, early teens and develop them as they want to and how they feel they should do. So it's no surprise that these young superstars are being developed by the best coaches, they're getting the best experience amongst the best players. So I think that's why we're seeing so many great young players. We've always seen great young players, but the volume nowadays does seem to have gone up a different level.
All right, so we're not going to make you wait too much longer, but we do want to hear from the man himself. When we said why 39 as well, he feels as though once he whittles down about the 100 that he'll put on a page, these are the 39. This is a great number to satisfy his main criteria. But what is the criteria of Tor Kristian Karlsen? Well, let's hear from the man himself.
My name is Tor Kristian Karlsen, football correspondent for ESPN, mainly write stuff about transfers, scouting, that kind of things. And I have the great privilege of compiling this list that we're about to go through, the top 39 under 21 players in the world. Well, it's a nice blend between the eye test. So I do consult little panel, 4 or 5 people that I trust that work for pretty major European top clubs, I would say. Of course, some of my subjective opinions come into play here as well. Some analytics being applied, as you can probably read from the piece. Well, the main driver here would be performance. It's hard to give you a precise number there, but I would say maybe 60-70% is on current performance. We try to project the ceiling of the players there as well. So that's a bit of a tricky one, but we try to make it as fair as we possibly can.
Okay, well, I'm sure he won't mind us breaking some of these down, but it is time to reveal the top 10 best young players under 21. Okay, so the list, you just saw the man himself there that we've already heard Rodrigo mention in Jude Bellingham. If you were keeping an eagle eye when Tor was speaking as well, you will see that we did flash up the article from the website and you could see that Jude Bellingham was among the top 3, along with Florian Versfeld and Jamal Musala. I know you guys will be happy to hear about that, but let's take a look at the list, how it does stand. We're going to go with just the top 10. If you do want to read the full article, you're absolutely welcome to do so over on our website. But here is how the list is looking. Number 1, Jude Bellingham. Then Florian Versfeld, Jamal Musala follows that. So you've got 2 Bundesliga stars there. Then we have Pedri and Gavi, Xavi Simons, Eduardo Camavinga, Rasmus Højlund, Lamine Yamal, and Warren Zaire-Emery. So we're going to go from back to front. We're going to we've got Mark back with us as well. Don't worry about that. But we're going to start with you, Gab, because with Warren Zaire-Emery, you probably have to hear about this player more than any of us because you have to work with Julian Laurent all the time. So what more can you tell us about him?
Oh my God, it's continuous. It's continuous. I think after William Saliba, I don't think there's another French player he loves more. I think what strikes you a lot about this guy, and it is a bit of a common thread with some of these youngsters. I was just thinking about this, is some of these guys will make mistakes. They play with enthusiasm. You can tell their upside. But some of these guys really stand out for their maturity. I'm sure we'll talk about that. We talk about somebody like Lamine Yamal. And I would put Warren Zaire-Emery in a similar category because this guy plays in central midfield. And he looks like he's got the brains and intelligence of a guy in mid-career with 300-400 games under his belt. I don't know if that speaks maybe to the kind of education that some of these young players get, or if it's just him, that he just has a brain for the game, so to speak. But that's one thing that to me stands out probably even more so than his technical ability. And it's just a shame, of course, that he picked up that injury.
Rodri, I've got to go to you next with number 9. It is Lamine Yamal.
The good thing of Lamine Yamal for me is, well, apart from having him in the top 10 players, is that he's an actual star for Barca. Because now, I remember last week talking to a Barcelona fan, and he told me that he would pay any money, any amount of money to go to any Barca game and see and watch Lamine Yamal playing in action. No? That is the good thing of not only Lamine Yamal, but also Højlund, Camavinga, Simons, Gavi, Pedri. I mean, they are actual stars, which is the good thing of all. And in this case of Lamine Yamal, I mean, he's quick, he's very smart, he's intelligent, he knows how to develop his talent under Xavi's presence in Barcelona. So that is why, I'm in love with that guy. I'm in love with the origins that he had. He never forgets where he comes from. And this is something good because he's only 16 years old. I mean, this is amazing. I don't know where you were when you were 16 years old, but I wasn't in a pitch. I wasn't in a stadium. Well, I mean, playing in a stadium. And when I see him, it's like, wow, man, he should be playing video games, not playing football at the highest level. And he's Barcelona star now.
Yeah, I wonder where everybody was. I know that I was trying to get on different lists, nightclub lists, VIP lists that I wasn't even legal to be in. About you guys. Anyway, Lamine Yamal, I mean, he could be on it for the next few years. As Rodri said, just 16 years old and already lighting up the pitch when he plays for Barcelona. And there are a few more Barca players to get to. We will. But, Mark, in at number 8, it's Rasmus Højlund. And there's not many things to celebrate at Manchester United right now, but this young man is definitely one of them.
Can I say that I'm a little bit surprised it is as high as 8? I think.
Wow.
Well, you know, listen, he's a 20-year-old. He came to Man United as a 20-year-old. He's obviously he's 21 now. He's got a big reputation, big potential, but he's had a tough year at United. And I think United bought potential when they signed from Atalanta last year. And I was speaking to Tor about him last year, and I think Tor's point was that he really, really developed in the second half of last season at Atalanta. He took time to adjust, but then he really kicked on. And he's gone to United, and unfortunately for him, he arrived with an injury. And he's gone into a team that is very inconsistent. And, you know, I see a lot of frustration in him at times in the sense that he's maybe not getting the service that he requires, or the team aren't seeing his runs. But obviously there's a talent there. You can see that. You can see some of the goals he scored this season. There's one in the Champions League against Galatasaray when he basically turned on the halfway line, run straight through the defence and scored a great goal. But we don't know what he is yet. We don't know whether he is going to be the next big thing or whether he is finding a level in a team that isn't very good. So I'd like to see him in a good team where he gets the chances that he deserves as for all the runs that he makes. But I think we have to be honest in the sense that 8th in the top 10 of this list, and there's some great players that aren't in the top 10, I think he's done well to get in this. So whether there's a little bit of Scandinavian bias from Tor, I'm not sure. But I think as good as he is, Højlund, I don't think yet we've seen the true Rasmus Højlund.
Gab, can you speak for Tor and this Scandinavian bias?
Okay, I think sometimes it's Scandinavian bias. I mean, first of all, I broadly agree with Mark. But that said, regarding Tor's Scandinavian bias, I think sometimes he's too hard on Scandinavian players. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, he put somebody named Erling Haaland at number 6 on the list. So I think because he was not good in the air, he said, and he's one-footed. So yeah, if he has a bias, I think he's often tougher on Scandinavians than he is on others.
Okay, Rodri, let me come back to you for number 7, because it is Camavinga at Real Madrid. Obviously a very versatile player and one that there is a lot of expectations on for the future.
Yeah, I mean, Camavinga is a top player for me, and he's going to make history for Real Madrid in the next decade because, I mean, he has everything on just one player. He plays well, you know, when he's trying to attack. He plays well, even better when he's defending. He knows perfectly how to play in different parts of the game. And when you play for Real Madrid, this is even harder because we're not talking Camavinga playing for, with all respect, Atletico de Madrid or Espanyol, Sporting de Gijón, or, you know, whoever football team. And when you play in Real Madrid never wait for any player. And that is why when he came here for Real Madrid and when he signed for Florentino Perez side, you know, I mean, everyone fell in love with him because, I mean, he's even attractive, man. I mean, he does everything well, which is the good thing of Camavinga because, you know, the way that he plays and the way that he develops and the way that he's been growing up in the last season and a half is just amazing. And that is why, you know, I think that he, alongside with Tchouaméni, he's going to be part of this Real Madrid midfield of the present and of the future in the next 10 years because, I mean, he's just amazing. And that is why, for me, he's one of the key players of the future because apart from, you know, the way that he thinks football inside the pitch, the way that he is, you know, I mean, his muscle structure, his physicality is just amazing for these century players that they need to be developing in teams like Real Madrid. So that is why he's ready for everything and he's more than deserved to be up there.
And we're seeing with number 6 as well, Gab, that this is a young player who seems to be ready for everything. He's already been around some of the top clubs. He's at Leipzig now on loan. It is Xavi Simons. He's proved to have that brilliant partnership with Lois Openda, and he's been a big part of what's good at Leipzig right now. Yeah,
Leipzig not going great this year, but Xavi Simons undoubtedly one of the real bright spots. Obviously, he did it on loan in Holland last year. You assume he's going to go back to Paris Saint-Germain, but who knows? I mean, what strikes you about him, for me, is he's got a tremendous sense of where he is, where everybody else is on the pitch. He does not rely on his athleticism. although he obviously has that as well. I think he's tremendous. Might almost be tempted to have him higher on the list. And I'm just thinking how I can slip in a Sporting Gijón reference the way Rodri did. But hey.
Rodri did. But
We are two Sporting Gijón fans in here.
We discovered that the team I have a soft spot for back in Spain during my time there is Sporting. So I let that one slide. Nice little mention, yeah. Okay, I'm going to put the next two together, Rodri, and I'm sure you won't mind me doing so. Number 5 is Gavi. Number 4 is Pedri.
Well, I gotta admit that it surprised me a little bit because Gavi now is injured, and Pedri, I mean, he hasn't made it like maybe last season or even 2 years ago performances, but I mean they are a really great talent player for Barcelona. If they are fit enough, they are more than the present and the future for Barcelona. The good thing of Gavi is that, I mean, he combines perfectly with Pedri, because what Pedri has, he doesn't have, and the opposite, the other way around. Because, I mean, Gavi for me is, the strength, the passion, the character in the midfield. And that is why if you compare Gavi with the rest of the top 10 players, I mean, he's completely different. Maybe you can compare Gavi maybe with Camavinga, because the rest of the players, they are really quality players. They like to touch the ball, maybe like Gavi, but Gavi has a little bit more than the rest, because the strength that he has and the character that he has on the pitch is just amazing. And that is why he combines perfectly with Pedri, because for me, Pedri is complete the opposite that Gavi, because, I mean, he's the mind, he's the brain. He's, I mean, the beautiful of the game, because when he plays for Barcelona, I remember him playing back in Unión Deportiva Las Palmas, and he was just a magical player. And we all in Spain wanted to see him playing for Barca. And when he came to Barca, I mean, he was just like playing back in school. I mean, he was like, I don't care that I am playing for Barca. I don't care about the high level pressure. And he's now doing well. The bad thing for me with Pedri is the injuries. They are not allowing him to be at the top form. But I mean, if you look at the under 21 players worldwide, he's more than deserved to be here, because I mean he has everything to succeed in the next 10 years, and that is why Barca doesn't want to get rid of him. Doesn't really matter what happens.
So as I go 3, 2, 1, I'm going to give you guys each one of these players. I do want to stick with you for this, Rodri, because you did say you hope to see Jamal Musala in the list. Here he is at number 3.
Yeah, I mean, Musala for me, I'm in love with him. I'm in love with him because, the first thing that I watched a game in person, in the stadium, in the Allianz Arena, I was like, who this guy is and why is he playing for Bayern Munich? With all respect for Bayern Munich fans, but I want to watch him in the Premier League or in Spain. And I think he has everything, the physicality, the way he attacks, the way he defends. I mean, he does everything well. And I think he needs a big coach, maybe like Guardiola, maybe, or someone of the same level. For me, he's more than ready for the present of the modern football. Maybe if you compare him to Jude Bellingham, maybe Jude Bellingham is more complete because he's scoring more goals, and maybe that lack of scoring for me is something that Musiala has to improve in the next years. But I mean, he's really fast, he's really strong. And I remember one comment from a guy that was playing against him, and he was like, man, I tried to tore him down, but it was impossible because he's fast and he's strong. So that is why, for me, he's going to be one of the one to watch in the next 10 years for sure.
Number 2, Gab, is Florian Versfeld, obviously flying at Leverkusen under Xabi Alonso right now, and you wonder if he'll stick around like his coaches next season.
I imagine he probably will stick around another season. If I were Xabi Alonso, I'd say, hey, make sure that guy Florian's still here. Has a sister, I believe, who also plays football. I'm being brutally honest here. I think this is a Tor one. He's a phenomenal footballer, and I can tell you I'm in love with him, like Rodri's in love with everybody who we mentioned. Rodri, not very monogamous, I might add. But hey, who am I to judge?
I'm in love with you, too.
Thank you. I personally, he's one of those guys I might have had him a little bit lower on the pitch, just because I feel he's still a little bit raw, perhaps, in some ways. If performance is going to be one of the benchmarks, obviously you can't look past what Bayer Leverkusen has achieved this season, what he's done under Xabi Alonso. Obviously, he made his debut before, and we saw that he was good. But just to put that into context for those who've been under a rock, Bayer Leverkusen, 13 points clear at the top of the Bundesliga, have not lost a game in all competitions all season, weathered the departure of Victor, not the departure, the injury to Victor Boniface, their top scorer, weathered the departure of Moussa Diaby last summer. You know, all these are disruptions for a player like Florian Wirtz, and yet he seems to have taken everything in stride. So I think that's obviously one of the things that really, really impressed Tor. This is a guy who, compared to most of these guys on the list, has dealt with disruption around him in terms of coaches coming in terms of players leaving, and yet he's taken it all in stride. And I think that's really, really exciting.
Really, really exciting. But I don't think it can be a surprise who is number one, Mark. Jude Bellingham topping the list right now, and understandably so.
Yeah, and he's not even 21 until June. It does seem like he's been around forever, because obviously he played in the Euros in 2021, and we're now 3 years on. He feels like a veteran. He's only 20 years old, but he is such a special player. And I think if you go back 10 years to look at the kind of the young midfielders that were coming through maybe 10 years ago, Kevin De Bruyne, Paul Pogba. De Bruyne had a false start at Chelsea, and he became the great player that he is, and he is a great player. And a similar thing with Pogba. He took time at United and had to go to Juventus, but for Bellingham, it's all been a complete upward curve at an accelerated rate. You know, he's been at Borussia Dortmund, you know, had a great time in the Bundesliga, almost won the league there last year, and he's gone to Real Madrid as a 20-year-old, and he's dominating the scene in Spain. So it's impossible to find any flaws in his game. Maybe last week when he played for England, a suggestion that his temperament might be a problem down the line, but I don't see it. I mean, there might be the odd flashpoint, but he's got absolutely everything, and he could be one of these players that, you know, he could end up being England's captain for 10 years and may never play in the Premier League, because why would he leave Real Madrid? He's at the biggest club in the world, in the, you know, arguably the best league in the world. The Premier League will have an argument about that, but, you know, they're not going to let him go. It could be a strange scenario whereby England's best player never plays in the Premier League. I mean, I know he's only young, but that could be the situation, because he's at Real Madrid and they're never going to let him go because he's such a top player, and he's 20 years old. And I know we're already talking about, you know, Ballon d'Or possibles this year. I guess he's the favourite right now, and it's crazy to think that at such a young age, but he's so far ahead of anyone on that list. It's kind of unfair, really. Should take him out of the list and have a different list. He's miles and miles and miles ahead of every other under 21-year-old.
You know who is in love with Jude Bellingham, Rodri? The Bernabeu.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I really agree with what Mark just said, and it looks like he's 30 years old, and it looks like he's been playing for Real Madrid for the last 10 years. I mean, this is amazing. I've never seen something like this. And when everyone is comparing him to, for example, Zinedine Zidane, it's like, wait, hang on, what was doing Zinedine Zidane at that age?
Yeah.
I mean, this is something incredible, and this is one in a lifetime. That is why all Real Madrid fans are so in love. Not me, it could be, but all Real Madrid fans are in love with him, and they are really, you know, enthusiastic about this figure, because they think that they are attending to the born and raised of a great football star that could make history at Real Madrid. And this is something, when we talked about Camavinga, we already said that we succeeding at Real Madrid is really difficult, and when you are under Florentino Perez power, it's even harder for these kind of players, because you get so much pressure on your shoulders that it's not easy to come here and say, okay, I've been playing here for maybe 2, 3, 4, 10 years, and it looks like that. And when you talk to people like Toni Kroos or Luka Modric, that they were amazed by the way he trained in the last Real Madrid summer tour for the US. I mean, they were like, my God, man, I mean, this is something strange, and this is only once in a lifetime to have a player like this. So that is why Real Madrid have to look after this guy, because they're not going to find anyone better in the world of football in the next, I'm not going to say 10 years, in the next 50 years, because Jude Bellingham is unique in this world.
And your good friend Carlo Ancelotti must be delighted to have this player under him right now, Gab.
Yeah, I think he's delighted with a lot of the guys there. But again, Bellingham, the way he was so plug and play, has been tremendous. You know, as Rodri said, he hit the ground running. He's done it at such a young age. He's also playing a different position, incidentally, than what he's played before, because he is playing further up the pitch. He's playing without a center forward in front of him. And he's taken all that on in stride. And to answer Rodri's question about what Zinedine Zidane was doing when he was his age, the summer that Zinedine Zidane turned 20, that's the summer he moved from Caen to Bordeaux. He wouldn't even move to Juventus for another 4 years. He wouldn't even played in his first World Cup when he was 26. So yeah, completely different career. I mean, look, if he achieves half of what Zinedine Zidane did, he will have had a great career. But right now, he is so far ahead of everybody's curve. He's just out of sight.
Mark?
Yeah, I just, if we just look at in the round, I mean, he is so far ahead of everybody else. And I guess the one thing we'd have to ask is that, you know, we talk about Zidane there, and his career was kind of a slow burner until he really took off. You know, there have been some, you know, real teen sensations over the years. You know, Michael Owen, for instance, Wayne Rooney, who basically plateaued by the time in the mid-20s. And whether that's because they played too much football at an early age, certainly the Premier League it's not very forgiving in the sense that, you know, rest wasn't encouraged back in those days. Whether Jude Bellingham will avoid that, but you know, it's something he has to be mindful of because he's been playing since he was 16 years old at Birmingham City. And a top career tends to be 10 or 12 years at the very top because the sheer workload that players have these days. I think he's better. He's in a really good place in Spain because the workload that he will face, it will be managed much better than if he was in the Premier League. But I still think, you know, he's been lucky with injuries so far. He's had the odd little ankle knot at times, but we have to be mindful that, you know, having come into the scene such a young age, the comparison with Zidane, it's all about how you end rather than how you start. And I'd like to see where Bellingham is when he's 31, 32, having had 15 years on the clock. But like I say, he's in a better environment in Spain than he would have been had he stayed in England because I think it's more conducive to having a longer career because of the smaller kind of workload placed on players.
All right. Well, we've actually got some chat coming up a bit later about the differences of where it helps young players flourish, maybe comparing the Premier League to La Liga and the Bundesliga. But before we do that, we do actually want to hear from Tor on a couple of players who just missed the top 10. Here they are, and here's what he had to say.
Well, those occupying the next places, you have Cole Palmer in there. I mean, in terms of mere numbers, I think it's unbelievable. He's well into double figures in goals and assists. He's been Chelsea's main creative player, especially under the circumstances. You know, the team is not functioning perfectly just yet, but still he has been extremely productive for them. So that was one to consider. Jeremy Doku, who started off very, very brightly with Man City, has faded perhaps in the last few weeks or months. And I think he was initially in my top 10 and he dropped out. Maybe a bit of recency bias there, but whereas Cole Palmer has got the end product, maybe Doku is lacking that. But you could make a good argument for both of them.
Let me start with you on Cole Palmer. Did you agree with what Tor had to say there?
I think with Palmer, I've been really surprised by him at Chelsea. He was obviously a talent at Man City. We knew that he had a real kind. He's a different player. He glides around the pitch. He's not an athlete in the sense that a lot of players are these days. And he's not a quick winger. But he's just got this ability to glide past players and create. And he's got a great temperament. So I've been really surprised by how well he's done at Chelsea, particularly in the situation that he's in at Chelsea, where it's a club in chaos, and he's actually stood above it all and been a really impressive player to the point where he could be sold in the summer, I guess. If Chelsea are looking to bring money in, he's one of the few players that could actually, you know, offload and make a decent profit. I mean, the Chelsea fans would tear the place apart if that happened, but he's now had such a good season that top clubs will be looking at Cole Palmer thinking he could be a really big player for us. I know Gab's laughing, but, you know...
I love your trolling of Chelsea, like gratuitous trolling of Chelsea.
It's not, but we know that Chelsea have got to find some money from somewhere, and, you know, he is their best player, and big clubs in the Champions League, which Chelsea won't be next year, will be looking at Cole Palmer thinking, this kid's got everything that you would want in a forward. So I agree with Tor. He could really have made the top 10, and I think he's certainly borderline. But next year, obviously, you know, probably a bit too old by then, but he is a player that is going places, and that means he might not stay at Chelsea. Maybe not this year, but next year, Chelsea's going to find it hard to keep him.
Gab, was that enough to go around the circle for Mark Ogden and give Cole Palmer the praise and Chelsea that they deserve?
Yeah, he's done it tremendously well in the fact that, you know, when your best player is a guy you sign in the waning hours of the transfer window, it doesn't reflect well on you as a club. What I would say about his numbers, there are a lot of penalties in there. And I also don't think that he's found his right position at Chelsea. It's not his fault, but when he plays wide on the right, he comes inside all the time, which is fine. Maybe he should be playing a number 10, but then that puts an onus on the right back with Malagusta. So he is dealing with with I think a lot of dysfunction around him, and he takes everything in stride. So that's certainly very encouraging. I'd love to see what he can do, with a better assembled team around him, with on a team that actually functions and produces the way the manager wants.
Mark, let's get your thoughts on Jeremy Doku then and what Tor had to say.
Yeah, I think what he said was valid. I think he started the season really well, but he has had a bit of a dip recently. I think whether it's that first season in the Premier League and the amount of times he had to play for club and country, obviously played for Belgium against England last week. He's had a busy year, and I think he came in. They let Riyad Mahrez go, and obviously Palmer went as well. And initially, it looked like a real top signing, and the fee, it wasn't too excessive. So I think he's obviously got a great long-term future at City. But yes, I think Tor's right. He has had a little bit of a dip, and that probably cost him a place in the top 10. But he seems a lot older than he is. So I think that's a credit to his ability that he just came in at City and just adjusted without any kind of issues. But maybe this is the time he's feeling the heat a little bit, in the sense that it's been a long, tough season, and the Premier League is quite an unforgiving league, as we know.
Now, as is always the case when it comes to this list, we do look at what could be ahead on the next list. We start to preview some of the players who may be making it next time around. So here are our ones to watch. Okay, let's get started then with a couple of names in La Liga. One who's coming, one who already is there, Rodri. We've got Endrick and Vitor Roque. What have you got to say about these two players?
Well, first of all, that I don't really agree with Tor, because I don't understand why Vitor Roque is 2 positions ahead Endrick. I don't agree with that, because when I watch Endrick playing, I see the new Ronaldo Nazario. It's like, whoa, man, he has everything. He has power, his muscles in his, what we call in Spain, tren inferior. I mean, his legs are, it's like 4 times my legs together. I mean, he's just a powerful guy, and he's scoring. He already scored at Wembley Stadium. He's not even 20 years old, and he doesn't even came to Europe, and he's scoring at the highest level with Brazil national team. Everyone in Madrid is talking about Kylian Mbappe's arrival and all these things, but no one is saying that Endrick is going to be one of the best strikers on Real Madrid history, and he's not even 18 years old. I mean, he's just a great guy, and I don't know how he will cope with the pressure, but I think he's going to be the kind of guy that he's born to play for Real Madrid. And with Vitor Roque, I think it happens a little bit the same. When he came to Barcelona, I think we were all like wondering, is he going to be Barcelona's Endrick for Xavi? And the way that he's doing now, this moment, is like, okay, he has to adapt a little bit. He's not at the best season of Barcelona, because we remember when he arrived, mostly in January, Barcelona was a complete disaster, and it wasn't like the best atmosphere for Vitor Roque to develop and to performance. But he's doing well now at the moment, and he has to be very calm down. He has to be little by little, and I think he's going to be one of the best strikers for Barcelona in the future, but not in the present. He has to adapt a little bit. He has to be a little bit more, maybe quicker in some decisions to take in some parts of the game, and he has to have back that confidence that he had in Brazil. And that is why, for me, Endrick should be a little bit higher than Vitor Roque, but we are happy here because we got one of these 2 best strikers in Brazil national team for the future in playing for La Liga.
Yeah, just to add some context to that, Roque is 18th on the list and Endrick is 20th.
Yeah.
Another big one to watch, Mark, is Kobbie Mainoo.
Yeah, so, at the start of this season, Erik ten Hag really wanted him in the team at United, but he had an injury that it delayed his kind of introduction for 2 or 3 months, and he made a start at Everton mid-season, and people were thinking, who's this kid? And, what's he going to do? United were in crisis at the time. And he's just basically, since that time, I think November time, he's become their first choice midfielder, because he's so calm on the ball. He can find a pass. He can hold possession, and he does things that much more expensive and highly paid teammates are unable to do. He's broke into the England squad now, and I know that Gareth Southgate, the England manager, was a little bit reluctant to bring him in. He wanted to kind of, tread carefully, which I just don't understand. If the kid's good enough, play him. I mean, we've seen that with Jude Bellingham in the Euros in 2021, that, you can't hold these players back if they have the talent. If he's playing for Man United and the pressure that comes with that, especially in a poor Man United team, he can handle the drop in standard by playing for England, which is a drop in standard with international teams. So for me, Kobbie Mainoo is a rare gem at Man United right now. I know there's a bit of a debate that his stats aren't as great as he should be, but we're not talking about stats. We're talking about a guy with the ball at his feet. He can read the game. He's got calmness that United need. Yes, he might lack that extra burst of pace, but come on, I'm being hypercritical here. He is one of the best midfielders we've seen come through in the Premier League for a long time, and I think he deserves to be a bit higher in the list. I think next year he'll be much higher in the list.
Let's talk about Premier League then, Gav. There's quite a lot to talk about when it comes to this list, because when it comes to the top 10, obviously we've just been talking about Kobbie Mainoo there, and he is developing in the Premier League. But when it comes to the top 10 from Tor, there's only Rasmus Højlund, one Premier League player in there. What does it tell us about the development of the league for young players to develop in?
Well, I mean, I think obviously there's a sample size issue that there inevitably will be, and there's a Tor issue as well about who you put in there. And there would have been 3 if Doku and Palmer had made it in there. I think you could make a strong case for Garnacho as well. I think overall, though, in terms of volume, I don't think it's that surprising that there are so many Premier League players. And the reason is, Mark touched upon it before. Premier League clubs spend a ton of money on their academies. And if there's one thing that we know, in the eternal nature versus nurture debate, like, do the academies produce great players because they have wonderful coaching and you can put any kid in there at 8 and he'll come out as like a fully fledged first teamer? Or are they good because they have the money and they attract talented youngsters? I definitely lean towards the second. And Premier League clubs have a lot of money, and also they're also very open. If you look around Premier League academies, you're not going to just find a bunch of English guys there. You're going to find a lot of the best coaches from all over the world and a lot of the best scouts from all over the world. And I don't think that's the case anywhere near as much in other European countries. So the combination of being open to attract the best know-how, the combination of having some of the best facilities, the fact that at youth level, a lot of these guys play against each other, which again helps you improve even further. All these things come together, and it's not surprising that there are so many players that are, I think, that are produced by Premier League academies, or at least come through Premier League academies, or signed. Looking at this list now, people like Gravenberch, like Gusto, like Papsar. These guys didn't come, like Udoji. These guys didn't come through academies, but they arrive very young because of the environment and because there's pathways into the first team.
Yeah, because as you guys can see there, even though it is only one in the top 10, in terms of the list, it is the most represented league in the list. And obviously it's Tor's list, but 15 of those players, the names you can see, are in it. But Mark, Gab just touched there on some of the names. Which Premier League side do you think has the best under-21 talent? Because obviously we heard him mention Gravenberch from Liverpool there. You've got Manchester United, who've just been talking about Mainoo. You've also got Garnacho, who's in the top 10. You've got Højlund. Højlund's in the top 10. Garnacho's in the list here for young players. Chelsea with Gusto, Palmer and Colwill. Who for you has the best under-21 talent?
I mean, that is a pretty incredible list, and it's really hard for the 3 on that list for each club. They're all great young players, and I think Malo Gusto has been outstanding at Chelsea this year, and he's gone under the radar because of all the problems they've got. But he looks a real find at fullback. But I'm going to say Liverpool because of the players that aren't on that list. I think I saw Jarrell Quansah at the weekend, and I've been really impressed by his ability in recent weeks. He's 21, so he just about would get in the list. Conor Bradley we've seen recently, who's he's given Liverpool's next manager, whoever it is, the opportunity to say to Trent Alexander-Arnold, look, you can move into midfield because we've got this great young right back coming through who could be our right back for the next 10 years. So Harvey Elliott, again, a really good, busy little player who I think has been unlucky not to get close to the England squad recently. So I would say Liverpool because of the depth of talent they've got. And obviously recently it got them through that real kind of injury crisis where Jurgen Klopp was having to put the kids in. They won the Carabao Cup against Chelsea with, I think, the youngest cup final winning team ever. So Liverpool for me have got a real batch of young talent coming through, and it's it's kind of up to the new manager, whoever it is, to make sure that they get the most out of that. But on that list shows you that each of the clubs has got some great talent, and obviously the Man United three, we saw that great picture recently where Garnacho, Højlund, and Kobe Mainoo sat on the advertising board. It went around the world because that kind of showed what United have got coming through. But the difference between United and Liverpool is that Liverpool have got the experience around them and the proven quality that United haven't got. So their young players at Anfield have got more likelihood to succeed because they're playing in a better team. I think the young players at United have got pressure on their shoulders to deliver when the more experienced players aren't doing. So I'd say Liverpool right now are the ones that have got the best batch.
I think that's fair, Gab.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. You could also look at it the other way and say because Liverpool are ahead of United and because Liverpool have more at stake right now, certainly in the short term in terms of winning trophies, that it's maybe going to be easier to get into the United team than it is to get into a fully fit Liverpool team. One other thing that I notice overall there aren't that many defenders on the list, but I also wanted to focus on two guys here, Gravenberch and Colwill, who, neither one has had a great season. Colwill's had his injuries as well. And yet they were on the list probably, when Tor talked about performance, probably based on what we'd seen in years before. I think if Gravenberch and Colwill had repeated this year, the seasons that they had last year, they would have been very close to the top 10. So I know one point that Tor often likes to make is that, after number 10, there's very, very little separating, number 11 from number 39, in his view. So I don't think that we should look at this and fret over whether Mayu's 31 or 35 or 28 or whatever, but that this is just a group of players who have really bright futures.
Rodri, let's talk about Barcelona, because in terms of single clubs, they have the most players on Tor's list with 5. And obviously we saw the names that come into the top 10 here. There's been some turbulent years at Barcelona, but one best Barcelona side that we remember is when we did see the La Masia players or the young players who really played the Barca way. Is this hope for Barca's future that these young players are doing so well already?
Not only for the future, Kay, for me, for the present, because when you watch any game of Barcelona, you see how Héctor Fort just made his debut this season, or how Pau Cubarsí even was called up for Spain national team. And those players are not on the list. And those players are going to be really massive for the next seasons. And that is why, that is the best thing of all in Barcelona's season. Because if you make an overall see of what Xavi did this year, is like, okay, you get a great talented players like Pedri, like Alejandro Balde. We never talked about him because he's injured, but he's amazing for the left back of Barcelona. But at the same time, they have, a great future, but they are the present of Football Club Barcelona. I remember Xavi saying, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, saying like, okay, I was the one who put Garnacho, Balde, Pedri, Gavi, alongside with Pau Cubarsí, with Héctor Fort, with Lamine Yamal. And that is why, if you are a Barca fan, you got to be proud of that. You got to be proud of that because you don't have the money anymore to be competing with Real Madrid, Manchester City, PSG, or that kind of clubs. So that is why you get to build your own stars, and you are doing it well. And that is why, you need a guy like Xavi to say, okay, we can't compete with, for example, Erling Haaland transfer or Jude Bellingham. I mean, we don't have the money due to our financial problems. Okay, let's see and let's do what made us famous in the last 15 years. Okay, so they construct, they build, and they make them debut, in the first team. And they are more than ready because this is the style, Barcelona style, that they are used to play. For that's why, for me, it's a great achievement for Xavi and for Barcelona. And they have a great treasure, and they need to look after those guys because they're going to be the future, but the present of Football Club Barcelona in the next season.
Okay, Rodri, let me end it on this.
Hey, sorry, can I just jump in on somebody? Because I thought he had somehow turned 21 or 22 even, and I didn't know or whatever, and I looked him up. We haven't even mentioned the guy who is one of my favorite young Barcelona players, Fermín Lopez. Did we just overlook him? Because
I agree that he's not on the list because I think he's not as good as these players that we mentioned.
No, but
he's a
Hector
top
Fort
player.
and whatever. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
surely you can have Frenkie Lopez and the Hector Fort conversation, no?
Well, it could be. But for me, I mean, the thing is that Hector Fort. I saw him playing at the reserve team, and he's amazing. And Fermin is good at the same time. But in that position, you get so many great players. You get to compete against Gavi, against Pedri, against Musiala, against Jude Bellingham. And for me, he's not at that conversation. So that is why, I agree with that list.
Here's what you need to do, Gab. You need to get on the phone to your mate Tor and have a word with him. All right?
About Frenkie Lopez, yeah.
We're going to
have a word with him about why he has so few defenders on the list.
Oh, here we go. Sticking up for the defenders. There's actually been some talk about this in previous editions. It is hard not to be picking the attacking players in this one, but that is something else you can take up with him. Last question to you, Rodri, and let's see what the guys have to say about this. Rodri, would you take Barcelona's 5 stars in the list over Real Madrid's 2 that are in the list and Endrick? So you've got Pedri, Gavi, Yamal, Balde, and Vitor Roque, or Bellingham, Camavinga, and Endrick?
Well, this is a tricky one because, I mean, if you see Real Madrid with Bellingham, Camavinga, and Endrick, you see, okay, they're going to be the one who are going to rule La Liga in the next years. But at the same time, it's like Pedri, if he's back in shape, Gavi once he's, ready after his injury, Lamine Yamal, Balde, I mean, there are 5 against 3. And I know that Bellingham is the best one, and Camavinga is going to be a top one, and Endrick is going to make history for Real Madrid. But now, at this point of the season, I would choose Barcelona. I would choose Barcelona for sure, I think.
Is he right, Gab?
Honestly, I'm viewing this in terms of, obviously the, NFL draft is coming up in a couple months or so. So viewing it like that, would I trade those 3 guys for the other 5 guys? If I was 100% certain that Pedri, Gavi, and Balde were going to, stay fit and go back once they return, be the players they were before, yeah, I would take the Barcelona guys just for sheer numbers, because I think Lamine Yamal's ceiling is extremely high. I think his ceiling is as high as Endrick's. And then you've got Pedri and Gavi against Bellingham and Camavinga. And then you've got the 2 other guys. So, yeah, for the numbers, I would go Barcelona.
Are we going to make it a Barca treble, Mark, to end it?
I mean, that is such a tough question to ask. I think all I can say is that the good thing is that sooner rather than later, we're going to get Barcelona back to being competitive again. The Clásico is going to be big again. Well, they're already big, but, big that matter in the sense that it could be very close, because Barca have got a great crop of young players coming through. But if you had to say what's it going to be, I'd say the Real Madrid 3, because, Bellingham is the real deal. He's ready-made. He's already there. Camavinga is the same. And Endrick, as we know, he could be the next big thing in the world for the next 10 years. So while, Pedri and Gavi and Yamal are there and obviously got great talent, I just think that right now, I think that Real have got a little bit more quality, 51, 49%, but I'd say Real just for now because their players are doing it right now.
Wouldn't life be boring if we all agreed? Thanks so much for being with us for the list. Make sure to go and check it out over on our website, and we'll all be back with you again across all platforms on ESPN FC.